Hello, Parsons students. This is Marcos, and I'm creating our week 2 class assignment briefing. This is a video I'm making in order to give you guys an idea specifically of what your next steps are in your baby board book project, and so that we can focus our class time, our in-person time or online for today, in reviewing and critiquing and having this online on YouTube for you guys to be able to watch and listen to and get a full sense of what the assignment is about. So I'm going to take you through that. For week 2, we're going to begin to do our part 2 project, which is our concept design phase. And here's a to-do list kind of based on where we're at right now. I'm recording this on the day of class, Thursday, before our class, before I meet with you guys to have you present your research concept deck in your small groups and give you feedback and have your classmates respond. So a big first step for you this week is to make that presentation and to understand and respond to your feedback that's given. And that means refining, maybe finalizing your book concept statement. Maybe you haven't quite finished that statement, or your concept isn't quite there, or maybe you have more than one concept, and we'll talk about that in our meeting today. And then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to continue to build on our presentation deck, and we're going to create a storyboard of your book. And what that means is kind of creating a preliminary layout and kind of the architecture of where your design is going to go and what each page is going to be about in kind of a general way. It's going to give you a chance to kind of think through how you can structure your book, the architecture of it, how it can work, what the content might be about, what the text might be about, what the imagery could be about. And then from there, once you establish that, begin to develop some examples of cover ideas or some sample spreads. It's really the kind of your first step in getting into the design. And just to remind you that this is what you were doing that's due today, which is the concept or the research presentation, research concept presentation. And each of you should have some upfront materials that describes what DERT is about, what the assignment is. You should have 3 case studies of books you find inspirational, or books that have tactics or ideas or techniques that are informative to where you want to go. And then you should curate together some mood inspiration about design direction in terms of illustration techniques or graphic executions, and also typography and color. And then the big part of this week, kind of where the magic needs to happen, is that after doing this research and getting these ideas together, that you kind of come up with a concept that you can verbalize in words and write out a concept statement, or write out 2 or 3 concept statements, depending on how many ideas you have. And to be sharing that today, Thursday, in our week 2 class, which we'll be doing shortly. So after reviewing, we're going to create a storyboard. And in creating the storyboard, the idea is to make sure that you're keeping in mind the specific architecture of the book, the specific page count. And as I told you last week, this is going to be a 16-page book. And that 16 pages includes the cover and the back as pages, like those are page 1 and page 18. And then 14 pages on the inside, which will give you 7 spreads if you see them as open spreads. So you need to consider how you want images and text to work in these kind of 7 double-page spreads, and create a storyboard sketch of how your book will be structured and laid out. And from there, then once you get an idea of the way you're going to create your storyboard, you want to begin to take those ideas and start formalizing them into actual spread designs or actual cover designs, and begin to create more specifically how you want your design to begin to get executed in terms of color and type and illustration style or graphic technique. So in terms of storyboards, this is just a quick example of the most fundamental, elemental kind of storyboard that kind of sticks more to the wireframing idea, and it doesn't have any design implementation at all. And I'm not saying that this is how you should do it. This is just kind of the most bare bone way of doing it. In fact, I think it probably should be more than this, but this is one way of making your storyboards. And as you can see here, there are 8 spreads here. and 8 times 2 is 16, so that covers 16 pages. And what they did here on the first spread is actually made it into kind of like a book that's face down, so the cover's on the right side and the back's on the left. And then from here, these are open spreads. So page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to the last spread, and then the back cover would follow. But their technique here was to kind of take their concept of teaching baby noises about, how teaching a baby the noises an animal makes, and pretty much saying, okay, there's a lot of animals, and I'm going to have one animal per spread. And so they're looking at this per page. So they're looking at this more as like a page thing with two animals sharing a spread. And that's one way you can look at it in terms of like, how do I see an open spread? Is it just about a page on one side with the different content on the other side? Or is it seen as one thing? Typically, I think it's more seen as one thing, but you can do this approach where one side does one thing, one side does the other. It's up to you. But here, this is what this is saying, that each of these animals are going to be kind of featured on each of these spreads. So this is a pretty basic fundamental example of a storyboard, but kind of more of what I'm looking for, that begins to bring in a design element as well as an architecture element, is this idea of creating a storyboard that's in the sort of sketch fashion. So I recommend that you create these kind of like square spread templates, and begin to assign the right amount of pages. So here you see that it starts with page 1 and ends on page 14. So basically they're only showing the spreads. That's okay, but what would make this more correct and better is if they put a page here for the cover page and a page at the end here for the back page, and probably should have called it page 2 and page 3 for the first spread, with page 1 being the cover and page 16 being the back. But that aside, you can see here that basically this idea of breakfast foods, I think is this concept, is executed by kind of bringing in the idea of what the illustrations might look like and what they might be like. And they're pretty actually specific to what this book ended up looking like. You may have already remembered this by seeing this book on YouTube. But here you can see that they kind of applied the typography in a handwritten way, but they sort of purposely made the typography kind of feel like the way they wanted it to be, in this kind of like whimsical way where it was aligned in different ways, kind of mimicking what's on the opposite side sometimes. So this is pretty good in terms of like getting a pretty specific idea without spending a lot of time in the execution part, but conceptually it's well thought through. Now this is one from last year that I thought was like the greatest storyboard I've ever seen. And I'm not saying that everyone has to make such a nicely illustrated, tight job of creating a storyboard. In fact, I have no problem with this at all, but this one is just so charming and good that I had to show it. And this one does what I was saying. It does have the cover as page 1 and the back as page 16. And then you can see it starts with 2 and 3. And here it showcases this book. I have it here actually. That is called Yummy Travels. And as you can see, if you compare the sketch with the book, that you're basically, she basically thought it through exactly how she wanted it and then just executed it. Now, I'm not saying that that's what you need to do. And I personally know that I don't think I could do that and imagine it exactly how I want it. I think it could be a rough idea, and then you might want to then work towards how it gets laid out by creating your layouts in the next phase as you develop this further. But that's pretty impressive that you can kind of visualize it like this. So once you get a storyboard done, then I want you to begin to create, 2 or 3 spreads and some covers. It depends on where you want to focus. But here's an example from the O book that shows just some spreads in this kind of rough fashion. But if you remember the O book, they're pretty close to what they ended up doing, but just in a very kind of preliminary way. And then here's what that student did with the Breakfast Time book, where she pretty much started to execute these ideas pretty specifically. Now, when it comes to execution, how fast you can do something kind of matters. So if you're intending to create something that has this kind of like flat vector art type and simple color, and you can do it fast, and yeah, great, create something that looks pretty real. But if your focus is going to be something that's going to take more time and your illustration style is going to be more of a diligent process, then that doesn't mean you need to be doing that at this stage. So it depends on what you're doing. And the key is that you do create a concept and you do create a style that you know you can execute, and don't put yourself in over your head by deciding to create some elaborate illustration style, which would be great, but that you can't do within the time we have. So keep that in mind. So that's basically what I'm asking for. I've put the assignment on Canvas, and in that assignment, in that Canvas thing, I did put a link here just to remind you in that the baby book lecture that I gave on last week. The PDF for that is there in case you wanted to read that again and get reminded about some things. Let's see, and I also put a book design template. And what is that? What that is an actual InDesign template that I think I have here. That is the InDesign template we'll be using for the actual art. Here it is. And the reason I'm providing this to you now, even though we're not finished with the design yet, is that if you wanted to get a template, you wanted to get a file that had everything to the right size, the 5 5/8 by 5 5/8 page size with a 1/2 inch spine, this is the template that you could use. And basically what you're seeing here is the cover on the right, the spine in the middle, and the back on the left. And one thing to keep in mind is that, like I had said earlier, the DERT logo on the bottom right and the DERT logo on the spine need to stay there exactly where they're at and the size that they're at. And in fact, the DERT logo on the cover is going to have a little white box around it, so that you need to keep that in mind when you're designing your cover, that it accommodates having that logo there. But then the logo on the spine, it can be black, it could be white, or it could even be a color if you wanted to kind of make it match your design. So that one has more flexibility. On the back, there's going to be what you see on the left here, there's going to be this statement that has that takes up like 2/3 of the bottom. So your design needs to be thought of in a more horizontal way that's at the top, so that you end up having both that statement stay there as well as your final image idea. And it's not that you couldn't go behind the text and there's like a white kind of opacity box there that can be adjusted to make that look right. So keep that in mind when you're doing the cover and the back. And then the other pages here, it has exactly 8 spreads, as you can see on the right here, which makes it a 16-page book. So utilize that, download that, and be ready to utilize that for your finals. We're going to be using this to turn in the books to the printer. So if this is the best time to start doing this, great. But make sure you don't, make sure 2 things don't happen. One, that you don't have the wrong format. You have it be the wrong size or the wrong dimension. It's not a square. You design something that's not made to be that, or you don't have the right amount of pages, and that you don't have 7 spreads and you have too little or too much. It has to be this exactly. That's the way the printing is set up. Okay. And then I've also, for turning in your assignment, I've created a new folder for this week, which is part 2, and that's where you'll upload your presentation deck. And well, let's get back to the lecture here. So here's the InDesign file, and we went through this already, but this shows you a little bit more how the back works, where there is a white box around the logo. The spine has the logo here, and here's the box that needs to be around the back text and the UPC code. You might also see here that the first statement, the first sentence here, or the second and third sentence, or the last sentence of the first paragraph, says this DERT book was designed and illustrated by blank, by your name, which you'll be putting in there at some point when you're making your final files. So a reminder just now to add your name in there, or we will. Okay, so here's a view of what this could look like in terms of what you're turning in. You have your storyboard, your kind of cover ideas, and then your initial layouts. Now, this one's showing just one design direction, and that's okay, but you might have different directions in mind. And this is a time for you to be able to kind of maybe show more than one option. And if you look on the class resources folder, I posted some other design assignments decks from last year that showcase different ideas, in one in this assignment where there's options. So don't feel like you have to just do one like you're seeing here. In fact, you're encouraged to do more than one if you can. But the big thing here too is also I want you to add to your deck from this week. So as you can see, these pages up to this statement here is what we did already. And I want you to add it to your deck so that you're building a deck that has the full story of your project. And then of course the thank you page stays at the back. So here it shows kind of what you did last week. You may be revising this statement a bit now and then adding these pages. Okay, so again, the post your part 2 on the Google Drive, which is linked in the Canvas assignment. And remember that we have these videos of past books that were done by students. And as you saw from Slack, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, we videotaped 15 more. So make sure you check those out and get, this is just a really good way to kind of understand how your idea can work by seeing the ideas of others and seeing how the book works and seeing how the reading experience is. Okay, so I think, yeah, we've talked about all this. And then I will see everyone tonight at our group meetings. And if you have any questions, reach out to me in the meeting itself in class, or send me an email or send me a Slack. And I look forward to seeing your first presentations. Thank you.